What's up, guys? So, yesterday I decided that I wanted to do a video on vulnerability, just kind of as a follow up video for the past couple ones that I've done lately. It was just kind of what was calling to me. And so, I think vulnerability is a very multifaceted understanding, if you will. Most people think of vulnerability as a dark emotion, as a negative thing, as a weakness. But I choose to see vulnerability as a strength. Without vulnerability, we can't grow. Think about a baby, right? Or plants or animals. If there's no vulnerability there, there's no room to grow, because if being vulnerable, part of being vulnerable is not knowing. And when we don't know something, we have to rely on someone or something else that does know, or that can indicate to us where to go from here, or teach us how to survive in this moment, or what skills we need in order to move forward. And so, could you imagine what a baby would be like if they weren't ever vulnerable? Like, think about that for a second. What would that be like if let's say a child was never vulnerable? It'd be a pretty difficult child to deal with, because they wouldn't be accepting anything that you say or any directive that you give, good, bad, or indifferent, to help them make a decision in their life. They would just be pounding their fists and digging their heels into whatever it is they know at that point, which isn't really much as a toddler or as a child. And so I see it as, vulnerability is a very positive thing. And not a lot of people can swallow that, because maybe their experiences with vulnerability aren't so pleasant. Maybe, they've had experiences where when they allowed themselves to be vulnerable, somebody took advantage of it. And if that's the case, it's totally understandable. But the idea is that we, as an adult, if we recognize these things, it's our duty to change our own narrative. If we've got memories and past experiences that don't sit well with us and scare us and frustrate us and anger us, it's up to us to change our relationship with that experience. And that requires us going through an experience again that brings about that feeling, our feelings, and choose to respond to it differently, from a different emotional perspective, a different mental perspective, a different spiritual perspective. But if we don't allow ourselves to go through that, we will remain the same, or feel stagnant, or feel stuck. And that brings a lot of feelings of frustration, resentment, envy, guilt, shame. And so if any of these emotions sound familiar to you, I would encourage you to consider where you can change your perspective, like where you can change how you're thinking about it, in order to perceive it as something that's beneficial for you, and rather than detrimental to you. And so for me, my experience came yesterday. I've had many vulnerable experiences lately, which is kind of why I chose to do a video on it today. But one that I really kind of didn't see coming, but was totally necessary. And so for me today, vulnerability looks like accepting when I'm in the wrong. And I know that I've said before on these videos that I don't necessarily believe that things are right or wrong. It's either healthy or unhealthy for you. And so that accepting when I'm doing something that is not healthy for me. And it wasn't me that called myself out. It was somebody very close to me, and she didn't directly call me out, but very indirectly, although I knew it was about me. And so I could have very well chosen to take offense to it and get, pissed off or aggravated or feel snotty about it. But something inside of me just kind of clicked. And when I read what she wrote, I decided to thank her for calling me out on my shit, because not very many people do that. I'm a very outspoken person. I like to think that I'm a pretty shameless type of person. I'm okay with vulnerability, as you might be able to tell from this channel. This is literally, I'm inviting you into my chaotic, sometimes private parts of my mind. And, I'm just kind of open and hoping that other people might benefit from what I've got to say about what I've got going on up here. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I know that I'm not all put together, but that's the whole point. Is I want people to understand that this is what life looks like for someone trying to find their way. And this is what my journey looks like. And so I digress on that. But she called me out, and so I was actually very thankful for it, because instantly I was able to see, yeah, I got a little fucking nuts there. And then I realized that when I'm in a vulnerable state, I switch back and forth from one extreme to the other of feeling very self-righteous and using that to fuel kind of like my actions and my sense of confidence. And then I go to the other side, the extreme downside, which is a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-criticism, trying to just kind of like curling back into my shell and feeling like, okay, that was not what you should be doing. That was stupid, Jen. Like, you should just pull out, abandon, abort mission, abandon ship, like just get the hell out of there, because that was not what you should be doing. And it's a really, really strong energy tug of war that I feel when I do that. And then I end up pretty exhausted and just not wanting to talk to anybody or engage with anybody. And so I'm trying right now to use this vulnerability and this moment and this experience and this lesson to continue to drive myself to where I believe I'm wanting to be going. I know that might sound a little confusing, but I'm not really certain about a lot of things. It just reminded me, I just did the last video on certainly uncertain. I'm not really certain about a lot of things, but I am certain about a couple things, and that is, that I want to help people. And this strange channel, if you will, is what was given to me as an answer of how to help people and in turn help myself. So, I can't really think of anything more vulnerable than allowing myself to make these videos and then, first of all, post them without even watching them or editing them. Second of all, to watch them at a later time and share my own feedback for myself in another video, so that people can kind of see how I'm checking myself, or how I don't want to say like evaluating myself, because I'm not going to check myself into anything, but just how I'm kind of, like evaluating my own thoughts, doing a self-inventory. And so this is kind of, what it looks like for me. And if I can inspire other people to check in with themselves, then that's enough for me. That's all I want out of this. And so I recognize that when I'm feeling vulnerable, or maybe even just in general vulnerability, the answer to being able to accept it and be okay with the feelings that it brings is if we are allowing ourselves to be radically accepting, i.e., trusting the process, understanding that everything that we're going through is happening for us. It's not necessarily happening to us. We're not a victim in our own life to our own choices unless we think we are. And so I was able to, or I chose to, and this was the big difference for me, was to see her criticism as an opportunity to be more accountable to the person that I want to be, not the person that my ego sometimes likes to ride off into the sunset as, because that shit happens. And, it also gave me an opportunity not to practice such harsh judgment of myself, because I very well could have done that and just kind of crawled back into my hole for a couple days until I felt ready to come out again. But I felt like whether she had pure intentions or not to do it, that's not for me to decide. For me, it was my decision to see what she said as something that can be beneficial for me and helpful for my evolution. And that's exactly what I did. So I reached out to her. I thanked her for being brave enough to call me out, because I don't really get a lot of that. People just usually ignore you instead of call you out. And I am very grateful that she was able to do that. Otherwise, I could have just been, standing up there, remaining looking like a fool on my soapbox that I built for myself. And so that's not necessarily where I want to be either, because when I'm leading from that perspective or that stance, I'm acting very self-righteous and thinking very self-righteously. I'm thinking in rights and wrongs. And two, I'm not leading with love. I'm leading out of, I guess, I didn't really think it was fear, but that's kind of, to me, the opposite of love would be fear, is, leading from a perspective that not everybody's going to see things the way I do. So I need to make sure that I just hammer that point home so that there's no denying the information that I'm sharing. And yeah, so I guess that would be, fearful that people aren't going to get it. And who cares, right? If I get it, then that's all that matters. I don't need everybody and their grandma to think from the way that I do. Otherwise, that would be a pretty boring world if everybody was thinking from the same perspective and having the same kind of mentality. That would not leave room for miracles or growth or surprises or, serendipitous events and all that great stuff. It would just be very mundane. You would be able to read everybody's mind because they would be having the same exact thought train as you. And that's like watching, your reruns of your favorite show over and over again. It's all well and good, but it's not any new information. You're running in place, essentially, which becomes pretty exhausting and frustrating after a while. And once you realize that you might be a little out of breath or out of energy because you felt like you've been working hard, but when you look down, you're still standing in the same damn spot. I don't know if that made sense, but it kind of did in my brain. And so I wrote here, when you remain accountable, you have the power of choice, what we hold so fundamentally dear as a human being. Choose to accept or deny that what you're experiencing is for us or not. And so I don't really like the word power because it has kind of a negative connotation to it, that, I have power over something or I have power in something. But again, I've got to kind of harmonize with the good and the bad. I can't just try to be all the way on one side or all the way on the other side because one side looks great and one side is not so great. to kind of live in harmony with the idea that we all do have our own power. That's the beauty of being a human being, is that we all harness this power of choice within us, and it's up to us to utilize that power in a way that is helpful rather than harmful. And if I'm using my power to try to prove other people wrong, then I'm literally doing exactly what I don't like in other people when they do that. And that's why I say that, our enemies are our best teachers, or the things that frustrate us or piss us off are our best teachers, because it literally shows us that we do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to acknowledge it or recognize it in someone else if we didn't do it ourselves, so that, recognizing that we do it, and it gives us the opportunity to, whenever we tend to do this again, because we will do it again at a certain point in time, that we can choose to do something differently. We can act differently, we can think differently, we can feel differently about it, if we acknowledge that, that's something that's going on inside of us. And again, I do believe we are mirrors for everybody. When I'm, talking to someone, whatever I'm saying is, what I'm saying to myself at the same time. I'm not going to tell somebody else to do something that I wouldn't myself do. And so understanding that if we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable with ourselves and with other people, that we open ourselves up to the opportunity to learn about ourselves and learn more about them. But when we don't do that, we kind of just dig our heels into our own belief and stunt our growth emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, because we're already kind of subconsciously saying, you don't have anything to teach me, like, you're so below me, or, we're just not on the same wavelength, so there's no point in us having this conversation or engaging in this discussion. And so when we are kind of avoiding things like that, or running from them, if you will, flight, right? We are evading our evolution. This is kind of coming full circle to the couple videos that I did before. And damn it, wouldn't you know, the universe really knows what it's doing, showing me all of these connections to this one, what do I want to call it? This principle, really, of being vulnerable, this accepting vulnerability as an opportunity to remain accountable. Accountability to me is a very big deal in your evolution of yourself, in growth. If you're doing things in silent and you're not telling anybody what you're doing, nobody can really hold you accountable, so you can get away with all your own shit. And so when we actually advertise ourselves, whether it's on social media or just in conversation with safe people, we are allowing them to hold us accountable to what we're saying. And if what we're doing and what we're saying aren't really matching, then anybody that supports our growth would be wise to call us out on that, because that if they didn't, right, they would just be enabling us to remain unevolved. And that's not necessarily what I believe friends or people that have your well-being at heart would want for you. And I don't believe that's what we want for ourselves either, but this shit ain't easy. And so I love Brene Brown, because I think she's like studied vulnerability for 10, 15 some odd years. She's a vulnerability expert, and she likes to, one of her quotes that I wrote down, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. And that's exactly it. It kind of ties back into this channel for me that, this is a creative outlet for me to kind of open up the invitation or extend the invitation to anybody that cares about their mental health, to think about it differently, to do it differently. You don't need to just go to a group or, shell out lots of money for therapy, even though it's probably beneficial. But I think people are kind of stuck in the idea that that's the only routes for mental health, that's available. And so this to me is my way of creatively innovating a pathway. Did that make sense? I don't know. To just give people another opportunity to express the way that they can explore their mental health. At least that's what I hope people get out of this. If they do, great. If they don't, there's nothing I can do about it, I guess. Right? And so vulnerability is our most accurate measure of courage, which is also something Brené Brown explains a lot about. That's the other, flip side of this. If I wanted to choose to see this as a gift, my capacity to be vulnerable, whether it's on social media or with other people or on these videos, that it is my greatest measure of courage. And if I wasn't doing this, how courageous am I really? Just kind of hoping and sitting back and hoping and wishing that something happens for me in the mental health field, that I can make a difference for people and, kind of change the game as far as what's available to help. I hope to inspire people to be vulnerable and to start having these types of discussions with, their friends and family, their peers, their coworkers, and instead of the just same old mundane, what did you watch last night, or did you see such and such on this, or I don't know, these generic conversations that we have. I'm not trying to call anybody out for anything right now. And so, I recognized yesterday that vulnerability really calls on our inner child. And that's, like I've said in the other videos, it's something I've been doing a lot of work on lately. And my parent self likes to just kind of try to come in and rescue my own inner child when they're feeling susceptible to the extremes of society and everything that's available to us today. So I am careful not to be too hypercritical of myself or judgmental at this time, because what I'm finding is that I can choose to do either or. I can choose to praise myself for being vulnerable, or I can choose to criticize myself for being vulnerable and not receiving positive feedback from it. It's all good if we choose to recognize it as an opportunity to grow. Then it's not for nothing. Anxiety is a symptom of invulnerability. And so I wrote a couple of other, symptoms that I believe is an example of, invulnerability, our choice to not be vulnerable at all, to just remain hardened and remain behind closed doors and not speak your mind and not share your shit with anybody. Anxiety is a big symptom of that. It is a whatever. Catastrophizing is another symptom of that, and by catastrophizing, I mean like doomsdayers, the people that think of the worst possible outcome of the situation. Instead of thinking like, oh, well, something good could happen, they just immediately jump to the worst possible scenario and start planning for or preparing, right, for the worst, hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. That's catastrophizing. And the whole zero fucks generation, this whole zero fucks given thing. It's one of my pet peeves is this era of not giving two shits about anything, because you can't selectively numb emotion. You can't choose to numb anger and experience joy or happiness. It just doesn't work like that. You cannot suppress one feeling without suppressing all the feelings. And, I feel like a lot of us have experience with this because that's the society that we're in today. It's so prevalent to just give zero fucks, right? Because there's something over there to do, or there's something over there to do, or there's another person to distract myself with, or if I don't want to think about this, I can just open up Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media platform you've got. Pick your poison, I guess, if you will. It's very detrimental to our resiliency, and it kind of starves our motivation for growth and expansion of our perception. We cannot selectively numb emotions. And when we think we can and we practice that, it's not until we feel, in a sense, depressed that we recognize it's not working. Because when you were numbing out the bad feelings, you were also numbing out the good feelings, and that's not very productive for our potential, if you will. And something else that Brene Brown said, I wrote down here, she kind of gave an equation: faith minus vulnerability equals extremism. And I absolutely love that, because I feel like more than ever, that's where we're at right now in the entire world. And so if we have faith in something, but we lack the vulnerability to trust the process and just trust that whatever is meant for us will come for us, it leads to extremism. It leads to us taking our lives into our own hands, our will into our own hands, and living too willfully, too extreme, that, this isn't happening for me, so I'm gonna fucking make it happen. That's, to me, extremism is, really just blindly, fearfully running towards what you believe is for you, or what you believe your purpose is, but not being vulnerable or strong enough to keep your eyes open along the way, and have faith that everything that's happening, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, is for the evolution of your consciousness, is for you to learn from. When we get stopped dead in our tracks by something, like getting fired, or experiencing a death of someone or something, an animal or something like that kind of stops us in our tracks, we tend to think of it as, a negative thing, but it's only that if we think it's that if we choose to see it as like a form of redirection from the universe, that where we were going was on our own will and not necessarily where that pure energy is intending to take us, then the universe is going to do what it needs to do to redirect us and keep us on our path to our purpose. I do, for me personally, fully believe that the universe has our back all the time. And for me, the universe is like what I guess other people would consider their higher power, their God. I just choose not to call it God. I call it the universe. All encompassing for me. And you're not wrong if you think differently or anything like that. I'm just kind of put that out there so that you understand where I'm coming from with that. And so, faith minus vulnerability equals extremism. And so when you're feeling kind of extreme, ask yourself how much faith you're having in your process at that moment. Are you allowing it to unfold and not trying to be the director of it too much? Or are you allowing it to just kind of happen for you, and you kind of just sit back and slowly take it all in, because I also understand that when I'm vulnerable and I'm wanting to feel sure of it, I start to run towards certain answers, and I move very quickly, and I make hasty decisions. And anybody that's experienced that where it didn't go so well for them, and understanding that if they probably just slowed down and took their time to really consider the choices that they want to make, that it might have gone a little bit better for them, you can relate to me then. And so kind of at the bottom here, what I wrote to wrap this all up, I know this might have been a little all over the place, but that's what it is. Be grateful and honor the ordinary. Practice joy. I also got this from Brene. She kind of wraps everything up so nicely and talks about joy as being the sharpest sword in our toolkit. And that's exactly what it is when we can practice joy for being alive and for having this human experience. Again, good, bad, or indifferent. Be grateful for whatever you've got going on or whatever you don't have going on, because if you had more going on, maybe you wouldn't be able to handle it. And whatever you've got going on, be grateful for that, because you're living, you're having this experience, which not a lot of people, well, not a lot, some people don't get the opportunity to experience the things that you're experiencing. And honor the ordinary. That's a big thing for me. I'm an extremism as far as I like a lot of action. I like things to be moving, and I don't like things to feel mundane, like the same shit every day. And so when there's none of that going on and everything just kind of seems ordinary and easy, I insert my own shit to make it a little bit more chaotic and spice things up, if you will. So if you can relate to me on anything that I talked about here today, I hope that you too can learn to slow down and to be grateful for the ordinary things that are going on and everything that's going on, because this is all happening for us. Time is what keeps everything from happening all at once. And when we are just trying to move that a little bit faster, we get frustrated because we can't move it faster. And then there's certain things that we experience where it moves too quickly and we try to slow it down, or we, get angry at the fact that, well, that went by so fast and blah, 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 blah. Just to kind of remain balanced and level somewhere there in the middle, not too far on this side and not too far on this side. Yeah, I'm hoping that I can take that into consideration a lot more. I will do another video at whatever point in time the universe calls for me to do one, and I hope there's anything I said in here that was helpful to you. If you watched this, thank you. If you've watched any other videos, thank you. If you hear anything in any of these videos that you think might be helpful for someone else to hear, feel free to share it with them. Also, feel free to ask me questions, to call me out, because we all know how well that went for me. Yeah, I'm open to it all. That's what I'm on here for. Thanks.